humans, dormant gods of war. The Galactic Council chamber was quiet, a tension hanging in the air that no species present could ignore. Representatives from dozens of civilizations, ranging from the insectoid Crothy to the crystalline Saphiri, sat in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. They had gathered to discuss a threat that none of them fully understood but all had come to fear. In the center of the room stood Commander Tarek of the Voldari, one of the Council's most respected military leaders. His pale, scaled skin glistened under the chamber's lights as he addressed the assembled leaders. "We've all seen the reports," Tarek began, his deep voice resonating through the room. "The humans, once thought to be a relatively peaceful, if unpredictable, species, have been changing." A murmur spread through the chamber, soft but palpable. The humans were still a relatively new addition to the galactic community. Having been discovered only a few centuries ago, they had made a name for themselves as traders, explorers, and scientists. Occasionally, there were rumors of their violent past, stories of wars fought over millennia on their homeworld, but those were dismissed as relics of their primitive history. Now, however, something was stirring. The incident on Praction 4 was no accident, Tarek continued, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he projected the holo recordings for all to see. A single human, Captain John Reyes, led a small unit of mixed-species soldiers against a Scaran invasion. Outnumbered 50-1, they should have been wiped out within minutes. Instead, Reyes alone took down an entire battalion of Scaran shock troops. Gasps rippled through the audience. The Scarans were known across the galaxy as the most fearsome warriors, bred for combat and equipped with the most advanced weaponry. For a single human to defeat them in such numbers was unheard of. "But that's not all," Tarek said, his voice lowering. "After the battle, Reyes exhibited signs of something else." His eyes glowed. His strength was beyond anything we've seen. It was as though he had tapped into a force beyond comprehension, something dormant inside him, something primal. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. The Voldari commander had been briefed about the growing reports across the galaxy, stories of humans displaying extraordinary, almost godlike abilities when pushed to their limits. It wasn't just Captain Reyes. There were whispers of others, human soldiers, explorers, and even civilians who had performed impossible feats in moments of extreme stress or danger. A representative from the Crothy hive stood up, her mandibles clicking nervously. "We have observed similar occurrences on the mining world of Gurus 9. A human engineer named Elena Novak single-handedly stopped a reactor meltdown by physically holding the containment doors shut, something that should have been beyond any organic being's strength." More voices began to chime in, recounting their own stories. A human doctor who had survived a plasma explosion that should have vaporized her. A human diplomat who had overpowered a group of armed assassins with nothing but his bare hands. It was as though humanity had been hiding a terrible secret, one that was only now beginning to surface. "The evidence is undeniable," Tarek said, his tone grim. "Humans are not what we thought they were. They are more than explorers or traders. They are dormant war gods." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and the assembled representatives shifted uncomfortably. Humanity had always been an enigma, a species that had endured countless wars on their homeworld, only to emerge as a peaceful member of the galactic community. But now, it seemed that those ancient instincts had never truly left them. They had simply been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to reawaken. "We must consider the implications," Tarek continued, pacing in front of the council. "If these abilities continue to manifest, if more humans begin to awaken this dormant power, they could become the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced." A representative from the aquatic Silurians rose, her voice wavering with unease. "We should isolate the humans, prevent them from accessing any more technology or military resources. We cannot allow them to reach their full potential." "Isolation is not an option," interrupted a tall, crystalline representative from the Saphiri. "The humans have already integrated too deeply into our systems. They are everywhere, our fleets, our colonies, our councils. Removing them now would cause chaos, and they would not take kindly to such actions." Tarek nodded in agreement. "Which is why I propose we observe. We must study these humans more closely, understand what awakens these powers, and how we might control them before they become a true threat." The murmur of conversation grew louder as the council debated, but none of the species present could shake the feeling that something greater was at play. Humans had always been underestimated. They were smaller than the Scarans, less advanced than the Saphiri, and less numerous than the Crothy. Yet, They had spread through the galaxy with unparalleled tenacity, adapting to any environment, surviving where others would have perished. And now, it seemed they were capable of much more. On the far side of the room, watching the proceedings in silence, stood General Catherine Cat Carter. She had been sent by the Terran Federation to represent humanity at this council session, but she hadn't spoken a word. Instead, she observed, her steel-gray eyes scanning the room with a quiet intensity. As the council members debated their course of action, Cat Carter felt the familiar stirring within her, the same sensation she had felt during the siege of Vega Prime, when she had held off an entire fleet of invaders with only her personal squad. She had felt it again on Elysian Station, when she had pulled a dozen survivors from the wreckage of a collapsed building with strength that no human should have possessed. Now, she knew what it was. It was the same thing that had awakened in Captain Reyes, in Engineer Novak, in countless other humans across the galaxy. Something ancient, something powerful. Cat rose to her feet, the council chamber falling silent as she stepped forward. "You're all afraid," she said calmly, her voice carrying through the room, "and you should be." The representatives stared at her, their fear evident, but Cat didn't stop. "Humans have survived on a world that was meant to kill us. We've fought wars, conquered diseases, and pushed ourselves to the brink of extinction more times than we can count. And every time, we came back stronger. What you're seeing now isn't new, it's who we've always been." She looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each representative in turn. "We are not your enemy," she continued, "but make no mistake, if you force us into a corner, if you make us fight for our survival, you will see what it truly means to awaken a dormant god." The chamber fell deathly quiet. No one dared to speak. The power in Cat Carter's voice, in her very presence, was palpable. Finally, Taruk, the Vuldari commander, nodded slowly. "We will not make that mistake." Cat nodded in return, the tension in the room easing just slightly, but as she turned to leave the chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Humanity's true power had been dormant for far too long, and now, the galaxy would see what happened when that power was finally unleashed. The gods of war had awakened. As General Catherine Cat Carter left the council chamber, a weight pressed down on her chest. The tension she had quelled inside that room was only temporary. The rest of the galaxy feared humanity now, not because they understood them, but because they didn't. She could feel it in the way they looked at her, the cautious stares, the whispered conversations. They thought they had glimpsed the edge of something dangerous. They hadn't seen anything yet. Cat strode through the long corridors of the Galactic Council's headquarters, her boots echoing off the polished floors. Waiting for her in a private alcove were two of her closest aides, Colonel Marcus Ridge and Lieutenant Zara Takara. Ridge was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark eyes always sharp with military focus. Takara, smaller and quicker, had a keen intellect and instincts that made her invaluable in any tactical situation. "How'd it go?" Ridge asked, his voice low, already knowing the answer from the look on Cat's face. "They're scared," Cat replied bluntly. "Right now, they're debating whether to isolate us or try to keep us under observation. Either way, they know what's happening. The reports about humans, about us, are getting harder to suppress." Ridge crossed his arms, frowning. "They're not wrong to be afraid. We've been seeing more and more of this awakening in humans across the galaxy. Something's changing. People are stronger, faster, more resilient in ways we can't explain. You felt it yourself on Vega Prime, didn't you?" Cat nodded, her mind flashing back to that fateful day, the heat of battle, the desperation as the enemy closed in. And then, something had clicked. It was as if her body had reached into a well of untapped strength, a force beyond her understanding. She had single-handedly held back the advancing forces, her mind and body moving faster than they ever had before. She had fought with a precision and power that left even her most seasoned soldiers in awe. "Yes, I felt it," Cat said quietly, "but this is bigger than just me. There are others, dozens, maybe hundreds, showing these signs, and the more intense the situation, the more likely they are to awaken. It's like something buried deep inside is responding to the galaxy itself." Takara, ever the strategist, stepped forward. "We need to figure out what's triggering this. Is it the stress of war, proximity to alien species, or something more fundamental, like humanity's connection to the universe?" "I don't think we have that kind of time," Ridge added. "The Council won't wait for answers. If they think we're becoming too dangerous, they'll act, either to contain us or to neutralize us." Cat's eyes hardened. Let them try. Ridge and Takara exchanged glances. There was no doubting their loyalty to Cat and to humanity, but they both knew that if the Galactic Council decided to turn against them, they would be facing more than political pressure. They would be facing an alliance of powerful species, many of whom controlled weapons and technology far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. And yet, Cat wasn't worried, not in the way she should have been. Something deep inside her told her that humanity could survive whatever was coming. No, not just survive, thrive. But why? What was it that made humans different? Why had they begun to awaken, to exhibit powers beyond what they had ever shown before? Takara spoke up, her voice thoughtful. There's an old theory that humans were always meant for something greater. I've read the ancient Earth texts, the ones that talk about gods of war, beings with the power to reshape the world around them. What if we're just beginning to realize that potential? You're saying humans are evolving into those gods? Ridge asked, raising an eyebrow. Not evolving, Takara replied, shaking her head. Awakening, it's already inside us, dormant, something is triggering it. Cat leaned against the wall, considering the words. Humanity had always been a species of contradiction, fragile, yet endlessly resilient. Their homeworld, Earth, was a death world by galactic standards, filled with dangers that would have wiped out any other species, and yet, humans had survived and thrived, pushing themselves to adapt, innovate, and endure. What if that was the key? What if Earth's harsh environment had shaped them into something more than they had realized? Maybe humanity's history of conflict and survival had forged something within them, something primal, that was only now beginning to surface. Before she could contemplate further, Takara's wrist communicator beeped, and she glanced down at it, her eyes widening. We've got a situation. An emergency broadcast just came in from the frontier world of Draconis 7. They're under attack from a rogue faction of the Scaran Empire. Cat's jaw clenched. The Scarans, the same warlike species that had started this chain of events by pushing humanity to its limits. How long until we can respond? She asked, already shifting into command mode. Not soon enough, Takara said. Draconis 7 is too far for immediate reinforcements. The Council fleet won't arrive in time. They're estimating 90% casualties within the next 2 hours. Rich cursed under his breath. We're too late. But Cat wasn't ready to give up. No, we're not. Get me a channel to Draconis 7. Takara worked quickly, her fingers flying across the communicator. A moment later, the holodisplay flared to life, revealing the face of Commander Anya Donovan, the human in charge of the colony's defense. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, and explosions could be heard in the background. General Carter, Donovan said, her voice strained. We're being overwhelmed. The Scarans hit us with everything they've got. We've already lost half the colony's defenses. Cat's voice was calm but firm. Commander, listen to me. We can't get reinforcements to you in time. But you've got something the Scarans don't. Something inside you. You can survive this. Donovan blinked, clearly confused. What do you mean? I mean that you're not just fighting as a human soldier. Cat continued, her voice growing more intense. You're fighting as something more. You've felt it, haven't you? That strength, that power. You've held back before, but now, it's time to unleash it. Donovan hesitated, her brow furrowing as if trying to grasp what Cat was saying. But then, something shifted in her expression. A flicker of understanding, of recognition. She had felt it, just like Cat had. You're telling me to awaken it? Donovan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cat nodded. Yes, and tell your people to do the same. Don't hold back. You've been trained to fight, but now, you need to let go. Trust your instincts. You're stronger than you know. There was a long pause. Then, Donovan's eyes hardened with determination. Understood, General. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. Ridge turned to Cat, his expression incredulous. Do you really think they can do it? That they can just awaken, like that? Cat's gaze was unyielding. I don't think, I know. Hours later, the reports began to flood in. Against all odds, the human colony of Draconis 7 had held its ground. Commander Donovan and her forces had repelled the Scaran invasion, fighting with a ferocity that left even the Scarans retreating in fear. Witnesses spoke of soldiers moving with blinding speed, of wounds that should have been fatal healing in minutes, of humans who had fought as though they were possessed by some ancient, unstoppable force. The galaxy would soon learn the truth. the dormant war gods had awoken, and humanity was only just beginning to realize its full potential. The real battle was about to begin. The galaxy had changed overnight. Rumors spread like wildfire, reaching even the farthest edges of known space. The once quiet whispers about humanity's hidden potential had grown into a roaring storm of fear, awe, and curiosity. What had once been regarded as a fragile and relatively young species was now seen as something much more dangerous. Humans, the dormant war gods, had awakened. In the aftermath of Draconis 7, it was impossible to contain the reports. The human defenders, led by Commander Anya Donovan, had turned the tide of battle in ways that defied logic. Scarran soldiers, veteran warriors feared across the galaxy, had fled from a force they couldn't understand. Humans had moved with impossible speed, shrugged off wounds that should have killed them, and fought with a fury that bordered on supernatural. The Galactic Council struggled to comprehend what had happened. In emergency meetings, species that had once dismissed humans as unremarkable now debated their future with a mix of fear and pragmatism. Could humanity be controlled? Could they be reasoned with? Or would they become an unstoppable force of destruction? But while the council argued, humanity moved. General Catherine Carter stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, a new flagship commissioned by the Terran Federation, designed specifically for these uncertain times. The galaxy was watching now. Every move humanity made was under scrutiny, and Kat knew that her next steps could determine whether they would face the galaxy as allies or as enemies. Beside her were Colonel Marcus Ridge and Lieutenant Zara Takara, both silent as they awaited her orders. The room was filled with the hum of the ship's systems, the tension thick as they prepared for what was to come. "Do you think they'll try to stop us?" Ridge asked quietly, his voice breaking the silence. "They're afraid," Kat replied. "They'll try something, sooner or later. But right now, they don't understand us enough to make a move." Takara stepped forward, her sharp eyes focused on the tactical display. "We've seen the beginnings of resistance already. After Draconis 7, a few smaller factions have pulled their trade agreements, trying to distance themselves from humans. But it's the Scarrans we need to worry about. They're not going to sit back and let this go." Kat nodded. The Scarrans had been humiliated. For the first time in centuries, they had been forced to retreat from a human colony. The idea of a Scarran counterstrike was inevitable. But this time, humanity wouldn't be caught off guard. "They'll come," Kat said, her voice low and steady. "And when they do, we'll be ready." Far from the galactic core, on the barren world of Trion 6, the Scarran High Commander Thrall sat in his war room, staring at the tactical map with barely contained rage. His sharp, predatory features were twisted in fury as he watched the latest reports from Draconis 7. "How," he hissed, slamming his clawed fist into the table. "How could a species so primitive, so weak, do this?" Around him, his officers stood silent, none daring to answer. The Scarran Empire had never faced a threat like this. Their conquest of human space had seemed like an easy victory at first. The humans had fought bravely, but they were outmatched, their technology inferior to the Scarran war machine. But now, everything had changed. "They are not weak," came a voice from the shadows. Thrall turned, his eyes narrowing as a figure stepped forward, an old Scarran mystic, draped in robes of dark crimson. Her eyes were clouded with age, but her mind was sharp, and her words carried weight. "Not weak?" Thrall spat. "They are insects compared to us." The mystic shook her head slowly. "You are wrong. These humans, they are something more than you realize. They are not just flesh and blood. Inside them lies a force we have not seen in millennia." Thrall glared at her. "What force? What are you talking about?" The mystic's gaze seemed to pierce through him. "Long ago, there were legends. Tales of beings who walked among the stars, gods of war, capable of reshaping entire civilizations with their power. They were said to be the creators and destroyers of worlds. The humans remind me of them." Thrall scoffed, dismissing her words. "Superstitions. Myths." The mystic stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Are they? Or have we simply forgotten the truth? The humans are awakening, High Commander. They are becoming what they were always meant to be." Thrall's fist clenched, his anger barely contained. But beneath that anger was something more dangerous, fear. What do you propose we do? He growled. The mystic's eyes gleamed. You cannot defeat them as you would any other enemy. If you wish to stop them, you must find the source of their power. Only then can you hope to contain it. Back aboard the Perseverance, Cat Carter stood before her crew, addressing them as they prepared for their next mission. Every eye was on her, every mind focused on the weight of her words. The galaxy is watching us now, Cat said, her voice carrying through the room. They don't understand what's happening to us, and to be honest, neither do we. But what I do know is this: we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity is more than what they thought. She paused, looking at each of them in turn. The Perseverance burst into the shimmering blue of faster-than-light travel, streaking through the vastness of space toward Trion 6, the heart of the Scaran Empire. The crew, united in purpose, manned their stations with a sense of grim determination. For them, this mission was more than an offensive strike. It was a declaration. Humanity, once underestimated, was now poised to take its rightful place among the stars. General Catherine Carter stood at the bridge, her eyes set on the holographic display that projected their target. Around her, Colonel Ridge and Lieutenant Takara prepared for the coming battle, but Kat's thoughts were elsewhere. She knew the galaxy was watching, waiting to see how humans would act now that their hidden strength had been revealed. Would they become tyrants, feared for their power, or would they be the protectors, the ones who rose above to defend their place in the universe? The Perseverance emerged from FTL at the edge of the Trion 6 system, the vast, jagged world of the Scarans looming before them. Cat stared at it, feeling the weight of the moment. Contact all human forces, Cat ordered. We go in together. No hesitation, no mercy. Across the galaxy, fleets of human ships received the signal. Commanders, soldiers, and civilians alike knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about defeating the Scarans, it was about showing the galaxy who they truly were, who they had always been. As the human fleet moved into formation, the Scarans scrambled to respond. Scaran warships poured from the surface of Trion 6 like angry hornets, ready to defend their empire. But this time, they were facing something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. The first wave of human ships engaged, and the battle erupted into chaos. Explosions lit up the void as Scaran vessels collided with the swift and deadly human fighters. For every Scaran warship that fell, the humans seemed to grow stronger, their tactics sharper, their will unbreakable. Inside the Perseverance, Cat felt it, the surge of power that had been growing inside her ever since Vega Prime. She knew that every human soldier in the fleet felt it too, that same ancient force pushing them beyond their limits. Target the Scaran flagship, Cat ordered, her voice cold with resolve. We end this now. The Perseverance's cannons roared to life, and the flagship of the Scaran fleet was bathed in fire. The humans pressed forward, unrelenting, each strike more precise, each movement more coordinated. They fought not as individuals, but as a force united by something greater than themselves. On the surface of Trion 6, High Commander Thrall watched the battle from his war room, disbelief etched across his face. His forces, his empire, the great and feared Scaran war machine, was crumbling before his eyes. And the humans, those frail creatures he had once dismissed as weak, were responsible. They can't be stopped, Thrall muttered, his voice trembling. Behind him, the old Scaran mystic stood in the shadows, her eyes gleaming with a strange satisfaction. They were never meant to be stopped, she whispered. They are becoming what they always were. Outside, the final blow was dealt. The human fleet cut through the Scaran defenses, and with a deafening explosion, the Scaran flagship was obliterated. The Empire's command was shattered. Victory was theirs. As the dust settled and the fires of battle cooled, Cat Carter stood on the surface of Trion 6, surveying the wreckage of what had once been the center of Scaran power. Around her, the human forces were celebrating, but Cat's mind was elsewhere. She looked up at the stars, wondering what came next. Humanity had proven itself. They had fought back against their oppressors, and they had won. But the galaxy would never forget this day. They would never forget what humans had become. Ridge and Takara approached her, the weight of their victory evident in their eyes. It's done, Ridge said quietly. We've won. Cat nodded, but there was no smile on her face. We've won this battle, she said, but the war for humanity's future is just beginning. Takara glanced around at the ruins of Trion 6. They'll all be watching us now. The Council, the other species, they're going to be terrified. Kat's gaze hardened as she turned to face her team. Let them be. The galaxy needs to understand we are not to be trifled with. But we're not conquerors, we're protectors. We've awakened, and we'll defend our place in this universe. With that, she turned and walked back toward her ship, her mind already focused on the next steps. Humanity's path was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer the underdogs, they were no longer just survivors. They were gods of war, and the galaxy would never forget it. The Perseverance lifted off from the surface of Tryon 6, rising into the stars, and with it, humanity rose to claim its destiny.